Owning your own business is kind of like jumping out of a plane. Have you ever jumped out of a plane? I have one time. And I was probably a little too indifferent about it. I recognize that's not a normal position, but it wasn't something I'd considered much. It wasn't on my bucket list, and it also wasn't something that I said I would never do. So when the opportunity came, I said, sure. I was going to go with my 5 brand new stepsisters. Now, I grew up with all brothers, so I wasn't going to be the one to wimp out at this opportunity. So I said, let's go. Now, it's worth mentioning here my husband. Look, if you have a partner, you know this is something you probably ought to discuss with them. He was not fully on board. He felt like it was frivolous and risky for me to go and just do something so dangerous when I had a family at home. Now, while I agree that the activity in general does come off as risky, my approach certainly was not haphazard. We were going with a reputable company that had been in business as a skydiving school and experience, and they were in the business of keeping people alive. So it wasn't like I was just going on Amazon and buying a chute and calling up a random cousin that knew how to fly a plane and asking if I could jump out of it. That was not my approach. And so after having many conversations with him about this, he finally said something to the effect of, I support you in everything you do, but I'm not happy about it. It's good enough for me. And honestly, why our marriage works. So we're in Las Vegas for this jump. We got to this facility. They kind of went over some of the instructions, and we got to meet our tandem, the person that would be jumping with us. So my guy comes in, and he happens to be the smallest and lightest of the bunch. So that meant we got to go last. Again, fine with me. I was just there. I wasn't having any strong feelings either way. So we get up in this rickety old plane. Okay, let's call it more of an old school bus that somebody had attached wings to. This thing was not in pristine condition. That probably should have been my first warning. But again, I figure their business is to keep me alive. They know what they're doing. So we get to about 11,000 feet, and I have 5 stepsisters, so they all were going ahead of me. And I could see and hear the fear as they each jumped out of the plane. The sister in front of me, she was the one who had jumped multiple times before, so she was really excited. And I was glad I was right close to her to kind of watch what she did. She got to the end and she jumped off. Great. So it's my turn. In my head, when I'd imagined sky jumping, I thought that you jump out of this opening in the plane. I would not call it a door or a window. It's just an opening in this school bus plane. But that wasn't the case. We actually sat and scooted to the edge. Now, these guys that jump with you, they're pros. They know to not hesitate. They know to you just keep on going. There's no dialogue. We're just going to do the thing. And so I remember we got to the edge. We shimmied it was awkward because we're strapped together, but we shimmied to the edge of this opening. So at this point, my feet were dangling out of the edge of the plane, and I did the thing that I probably should not have done, the thing that they warn you always about. I looked down. That's when it hit. And it was not so much conscious, but it was more like my eyes processed a scene that told my brain, this is death. And my brain absorbed that and told my body, you are going to die. And I felt that very, very much. My tandem buddy on my back knew exactly what was happening. Now, the instructions that we had, which were completely out of my mind at this point, were to keep our eyes up and our heads back. So what he did was he gently reached his arm around me and put his hand on my forehead like this and pulled my forehead back so that my head was resting on his shoulder. It just so happened that the angle of the plane and our positioning on that day, on that time of day, was such that when I put my head back, the sun was right there at my 12 o'clock in all its glory. They say it's bad to look directly at the sun. I'm sorry, but I fully embraced the sun in that moment. It was something that had guided me all my life. It was something that I knew, that I trusted, and I locked in on that sun. And you know what? It made all the difference. Fear gone. I went from falling to flying in that moment. And that's what brings me to this idea of coaches, teammates, and fans that we have to have in order to succeed. And especially if you are a business owner or doing anything that's risky, maybe that others see as haphazard or scary. Find your coach, your teammate, and your fans. In that moment, though it was brief, that sun was my coach. It was my guide. It had been there for me all my life. It was something that gave me comfort, something that I could rely on. My teammate was the guy strapped to my back. Now, I talk about this a lot. Teammates are potentially the most impactful influencer in our lives because they're in the situation with us. And so often it's the one relationship that we get wrong because we think that our teammates are our friends and our family and the people that we love the most. And it's just not about the relationship, it's about the alignment. You can have those close loved ones be teammates, but I had a stranger, a perfect stranger, but we were aligned. You bet we were. I didn't want to die, and I knew he didn't either. And he had the skills to get me to my destination. Last, fans, and there's argument whether or not they're really necessary for our success, but the support, even reluctant support that I had from my family, the excitement that I had from my 5 stepsisters, made the experience worthwhile. It made it more fun. It made it more enjoyable. Having those people that were cheering me on and wanting me to succeed, it made a big difference. So if you find yourself at the cusp of a new adventure, a new business, a new opportunity, something that you've not really maybe thought through enough, make sure you have a coach, a teammate, and a fan. Carefully curate those connections because your life just may depend on it.